time for your Political Maniacs. This week's Political Maniac is one of my favorites. U.S. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke. This time around, America, it goes a little something like this. During his time as Secretary, Zinke has repeatedly lied about being a geologist in public settings while discussing issues of climate change and offshore drilling. Most recently, Zinke used his imaginary status as a geologist to justify his decision to shrink the Bear Ears National Monument in Utah, formerly established by President Barack Obama. According to actual geological professionals, Zinke seems to lack the basic understanding of modern geology, including the fact that climate change and global warming is due to human activity. This isn't the first time we've questioned Zinke's behavior, and I guarantee you this, Fowler Nation, it won't be the last. Let's take a listen to Mr. Zinke himself tell us that he's a geologist.
I'm a geologist, but even I was shocked at the technology of what the new drilling rigs look like.
The data set was largely unchanged because we've done really in the areas, we haven't done a lot of seismic in a review of it, but that's the question I asked, and I'm a geologist.
Now, we here at the Fowler Show believe that the facts matter, so here are the facts. Zinke majored in geology at the University of Oregon, but never worked in the field professionally. Zinke also admitted that he picked his major by closing his eyes and randomly pointing at a list of disciplines. This is all facts from Zinke himself. So while he is a geologist by training, he isn't, quote unquote, a geologist by practice. And I think even calling him a geologist by training would be short-sighted a little bit, because geology is the study of geo, which is Earth. And the study of Earth means that you believe in the facts. And the facts are pretty simple, because the world's geologists believe that the climate is warming rapidly due to human activity. But for some reason, Mr. Zinke missed this lesson when he was at the University of Oregon. But I digress. Since becoming the leader of the 70,000-person Interior Department, Zinke has suggested that he was a geologist and a former geologist at least 40 times in public settings, including many different times under oath in the United States Congress. Now, I wouldn't call this, I'm not going to call this perjury, because I don't think he perjured himself, because he, yes, indeed, it is true, he has a bachelor's degree in geology. And so I guess for terms of practice, that would make him a geologist. I mean, that also means that, for that matter, my producer, Rich Webster, as you guys all know, he has a degree in music. And so I guess by default, that would make him an expert musician, right? America? I don't know, maybe he goes by musician. I mean, you could think about all of these various degrees that people have, right? And I guess to some extent having one degree in this discipline could make you that. I mean, does that mean that if I have a degree in biology, I'm a biologist? Does that mean that if I have a degree in psychology, I'm a psychologist and I can, start treating people on day one? I'm asking these questions because I think it's important for us to have this conversation, America. How about if I have a degree in aviation? Does that mean I can fly a plane tomorrow? I mean, I'm asking these questions because I think it's uber important that we understand how Mr. Zinke makes these claims, why he makes these claims, and whether or not these claims are okay. Now, in a bad example, here's a bad example. So this is what he said in a quote to Breitbart News. Florida is different in the currents. I'm a geologist. It's different in geology. This is what he said in an interview to Breitbart, defending his decision to exempt Florida from offshore drilling. So he said the reason why it's okay, why we can't drill in Florida, is because Florida has a different current. Now, I'm not a geologist, but in Florida, I don't know if that's still the case, but when I was in Florida, we were required in elementary school to take classes about Florida's environment and Florida's like we took classes in the Everglades. And if I'm not mistaken, Florida is on the Gulf Stream. And the Gulf Stream runs from Florida, well, it starts right around the Bahamas, and it goes all the way up, all along the eastern seaboard, almost over to Iceland. Like, don't quote me on it because I'm not a geologist, but I'm almost certain that that's the case. And if that is the case, what makes the Florida current so much different from the current in Massachusetts or the current in Virginia or the current in North Carolina, the current in South Carolina? To the contrary, I would argue that you have another problem. The reason why there should be no offshore drilling in the entirety of the East Coast is because the Gulf Stream is just so powerful. Remember, you know, during hurricane season, right? Like when a hurricane hits the Gulf Stream, it literally can churn it starts to move quicker, and it churns all the way up the eastern seaboard because it's on the Gulf Stream, and that body of warm water sort of zips its way up the East Coast. That's how we got Superstorm Sandy. Remember that? Yeah, that's how that happened. So I'm not a geologist, but I know a little bit about geology. And Mr. Zinke, there's nowhere on the eastern seaboard, nowhere near the Gulf Stream, that we should allow for offshore drilling, because that means that this oil, if there's ever oil leak or there's ever oil spill like Deepwater Horizon, that water can move oh so much more quicker and can damage oh so much more coastline, because if it gets in the Gulf Stream, that water is now moving all the way north, which is why you shouldn't want offshore drilling at all on our eastern seaboard, which is why some are beginning to question Mr. Zinke's geological credentials, America, because it doesn't seem to make common sense. So once again, Trump's Interior Secretary is in the news, and he adds to the swamp cabinet. And this cabinet is oh so swampy. I mean, you have him, you have Scott Pruitt, you have Betsy DeVos, you have Ben Carson, and they're just a swampapalooza. I mean, geez. I mean, President Trump ran on this whole idea of draining the swamp. And I gotta tell you, I feel like he's come to Washington and he's dumped like 5,000 to 20,000 tons of algae and swamp on top of the swamp that was already here. And we're drowning in it. And it's so obvious and it's so clear, and we can all see it.